trying to see if I can live stream from my phone here as I am traveling for you. Yeah, let's give this a go. So hopefully this works. We can get a show in. Do you mind if I start with a rant while we wait for people to show up? I've been in Detroit, Michigan, the last maybe 10 days on a family emergency matter. And so I would go to the hospital every day, check out my family member, try to arrange whatever logistics I can. I have a whole story for you in a future episode about the Canadian healthcare system because the family member is Canadian, couldn't get this person transferred across the border. To this day, we failed to do that. And we're going to talk about the Canadian healthcare system and what that means for your business at some point. But I'm in Detroit and I go to the hospital every day. I do my thing. I'm trying to keep up with my work. And then around 7 p.m., because I started early, so around 7 p.m., I'm sort of done. And I go check out the city a little bit. Specifically, there's an area in Detroit, if you ever get a chance, called Birmingham, Michigan. And it's a cool area. I know if you're not from Detroit, you have negative thoughts about what's going on in Detroit, but Detroit's pretty cool. I like this city a lot. So Birmingham, it's got great shops, but most importantly for me in this scenario, it's got good restaurants and martini bars and a cigar bar, Churchill's, I think it's called. So you can go in there and smoke a cigar and have some food and some drinks. So it's a pretty cool place. So I went there almost every night for 7, 8, 10 nights in a row. And that would include on July 4th, Independence Day in the US. I know I have an international audience. So America's birthday, I go there on July 4th, and none of the restaurants are open that I want to go to. There's one restaurant open in all of Birmingham. And so, okay, I pop in there. It looks like a good place. And I do my thing. I'm by myself. So I jump up at the bar and I order my standard martini. There's a reason this show used to be called Martinis with Scott. And so I would jump up to the bar and I'd order my martini, and then I ordered some sushi for dinner. So the bartender is futzing around. The place is pretty busy. The bartender is futzing around. He's not making my drink. He's not punching stuff into the computer. Then eventually he gets around to bringing my drink, which is great. And then he goes away, and I'm drinking my martini, and I'm looking around the restaurant or the bar, and about 20 minutes later, he comes back and goes, oh, by the way, on the food, the kitchen's closed, so you can't get any food. And I said, oh, shit. So then he goes back and he ends up getting me some sushi to eat. But I'm looking around this bar and this restaurant, and it's kind of sexy. There's lots of younger people, and the women are all dressed up, and it's kind of busy. And across the bar, this is, if you just joined us, this is the rant part while I wait for people to join the show. If you look at the bar, there's about 4 or 5 guys there in this fancy place wearing ball caps. And I know I just got up from traveling Alpha Red Eye. I should have a ball cap right now, but not in a fancy restaurant and bar. So I'm like not too stressed about that because there's literally a ball game on TV. And so there's just guys having drinks, watching the game. Okay, that's cool. I look over to the fine dining restaurant portion, and a great number of the crowd, the guys, are wearing hats. They're wearing hats. I mean, it's 9 p.m. at this point on July 4th. Is your hair so bad that you need to wear a ball cap? I mean, it's crazy. It's not that your hair is bad. It's part of the uniform. It's the look. And what look is that? It's the douchebag look. I was texting a friend of mine from Birmingham. I said, this place is just completely douche central, to which he replied, 100% it is. And I counted. There was 18 men in that restaurant. 13 of them were wearing ball caps. There was a great scene. Do you remember the Sopranos show? I think it was an HBO series that ran forever. Sopranos, the New Jersey mobster, and they're in his favorite Italian restaurant. And Tony Soprano, the Godfather, sees and gets upset by some younger guy with his date wearing a ball cap for dinner, and he goes up and he says, remove the cap, looks down at the guy, walks up to his table, right, stands beside him and says, remove the cap. And the kid protests, and then and then hey, thank you, whatever your name is, why are you gay? I'm just a happy person. I'm just a happy person. I'm certain that's what you meant in the comments. And so and so Soprano goes up, and the kid says, I'm not going to remove my hat. And Tony just stands there and intimidates him by staring at him. And then the kid removes his hat. So that was cool. Look at your date, guys, younger generations, Gen Y, Gen Z, whatever you are, your date is spending, your woman is spending hours, literally hours, picking out dresses, picking out shoes, getting ready, getting dressed up for herself, for the establishment, for you, and you're throwing on some ripped jeans and a ball cap. Have some respect. Have some respect for the establishment. Have some respect for your date. Have some respect for yourself. Don't be a douche. Be a man. All right. Had to get that off my chest. So I was flying back to Calgary. Flew back to Calgary last night on a Boeing 737, not a comfortable Boeing 737 because it was on WestJet out of Toronto, and I got in late. But while I was on the Boeing, I was reading the news. And what did I read in the news? I read that the Boeing jet that yesterday, a Boeing jet operated by United Airlines lost its main landing gear wheel. Lost a wheel while taking off from Los Angeles, and the plane was forced to land in Denver after the incident, and no one was hurt, thank God. But I know, can't be cool. You're taking off in your plane, and the wheel falls off. So I'm on a Boeing plane on WestJet, and I'm reading the news, and I'm reading about wheels falling off a Boeing aircraft in the United States. And then I read a second story about Boeing, which is that Boeing yesterday agreed to, maybe it was 2 days ago now, but agreed to plead guilty to misleading air safety regulators in the run-up to 2 deadly 737 MAX crashes. Now, those crashes were back in 2018, 2019. I think it was 350 some people. You can correct me in the comments. If you need to, correct me in the comments that if I'm wrong on the time frame, but there were 2 crashes of 737 MAXs from Boeing, and Boeing pled guilty to lying to the regulators about air safety procedures at Boeing. And so as part of that plea deal, Boeing, what did they do? One count of conspiracy to defraud the U.S., and they've agreed to $244 million in criminal fines and to spend $455 million over the next 3 years to improve compliance and safety programs. And they also have to hire an independent monitor, like an auditor, to make sure that they that over 3 years they actually implement those improvements. Now, for context, $244 million sounds like a ton of cash, right? I mean, it does sound like a lot of money, but for context, just to one customer alone, being the Department of Defense last year, they did about here come the Jew comments. They did about $27 billion in revenue just to the Department of Defense. So the stories about Boeing, which now feel like it's every day, right? Or every week we hear something more about Boeing and the problems that they're having. Sorry, you guys are distracting me with the comments. It's very funny. Inappropriate, grossly inappropriate, and should not be on my show. But it is making me laugh. So the deadly crashes, now it feels like we hear about Boeing every couple of weeks in the news. In the last 2 years alone, Boeing has faced several maintenance issues with their aircraft, including, check this out, last 2 years, engine fires. Incidences, there was one in particular on a 737 MAX yet again, where the United Airlines flight yet again experienced an engine fire warning while landing in Newark, New Jersey, and that was in June 2023. and it was ultimately attributed to a fuel leak and soot damage, whatever the hell that means. Doesn't the soot come from the fire itself? Very strange. Loose bolts and door issues. What? Several Boeing 737 MAX 9 planes were found to have improperly reinstalled bolts, which led to an incident such as a rear door plug blowing off during a flight. Go in edition for Fox News. Who's got time? This issue resulted in but thank you. I appreciate the compliment on that. This issue, so they've got bolts flying off the plane, and as a result, one of these planes had the door in flight. The door flies off the plane. They've had wheel issues in January 2024. A Boeing 757 this time by Delta Airlines this time lost its nose wheel while trying to take off. The incident required their aircraft to return to the gate. And so that was the wheel one yesterday was a United flight, and they had one before it was a Delta. And they still have the diving planes. The 787 Dreamliner experiences an abrupt drop in altitude during a flight from Australia to New Zealand. This is the same thing that they think happened with Malaysian Airlines back in, when was that, 2014? You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments there. But, you're just flying along, all of a sudden the plane just drops. And that's not what happened when the guy ended up a couple of weeks ago in the overhead bin with his feet hanging out and dangling. That was turbulence. That wasn't a Boeing issue, we think. But they've had all of these problems, and the question, as business leaders, as people interested in organizations and how to improve things, the question is why. That's what I want to think about. And could it be bad leadership? This guy, the CEO of Boeing, is a David Calhoun. He's the current CEO of Boeing, and he was appointed as CEO in January 2020, and he's leaving the end of this year, 2024. So he's had a short run. He's had an unsuccessful run, certainly from a safety perspective. And he's in and he's out. So clearly, leadership is an issue. We can see that. We don't know specifically, but we do know that this David Calhoun, when he came in as CEO, his big mission was to double down on Boeing's DEI culture. So what is DEI in business? Diversity, equity, inclusion. It's an idea to try, a well-founded idea, by the way, I think, with good intentions, to increase diversity throughout an organization to more fairly reflect society as a whole, and to give opportunities to groups that maybe haven't had the same opportunities that existed before. So it comes in a societal perspective, it comes from a really good space, and to sort of create policies and to enforce this culture of including different groups of people within organizations. So that all sounds good on the surface. But did that contribute to these problems? I mean, if you listen to Fox News, as somebody said, I should go audition for that. If you listen to Fox News, it's all about DEI. DEI is the problem with everything. I'm not so sure that's true, but I think there is a lesson to be learned here. Is it a bad safety culture? Are the planes just too complicated for anybody to know what's going on, or all of the above? Like, when you're running a business, when you're running a complicated organization, the answer is always all of the above. As Gary Vaynerchuk would say, it's not an and thing. It's not an or thing. It's an and thing. It's always all of the above, and you need to consider all of those points in any complex situation. It's never one thing. It's never univariable. I guess that's the best way to express it. So let's think about this. Do we have at Boeing a safety culture problem? Do we have a DEI cultural problem? Well, some more information. There was 2 Boeing whistleblowers in 2024, one in March and one in May. Whistleblowers, serious whistleblowers, go to Congress type of whistleblowers, and These one of them was Boeing, John Barnett, a former Boeing quality control manager who raised numerous safety concerns about the company's production processes. So that was one, and that was in March 2024. And even more recently, a second whistleblower, Joshua Dean, he was a quality auditor at Spirit Aerosystems, which supplies parts to Boeing. So he was vocal about alleged safety issues in the production of the Boeing 737 MAX parts and had raised concerns about serious misconduct on the production line. Didn't provide any details about that I have anyways. And so you got Joshua Dean in May, and John Barrett in March. And so we have whistleblowers coming forward and say, hey, we have a cultural problem of at Boeing and in the supply chain, and it's being covered up. So both of these whistleblowers have been Epstein. That's right, they're both dead, both of them. So John Barnett was found dead from apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound in March 2024 in a hotel parking lot in South Carolina. The second fellow, Joshua Dean, died in May 2024. Okay, maybe he didn't come forward in May 2024. The dates I were giving you were the death dates. But anyways, it was shortly after being a whistleblower. So he died in May 24 following a sudden and severe infection. So they're both dead. They're both Epstein. No, I'm not saying it was Hillary Clinton, but they are dead. And it is true that Boeing is America's number one supplier of weapons. The number one supplier to the Department of Defense in the U.S. Last year, they did, as I said, about $27 billion to that one customer alone. So we know we have this culture of a poor culture when it comes to safety at Boeing, and it's not necessarily clear that from a statistical perspective that Boeing is as bad as we make it out to be. 67% roughly of all planes flying over North America right now are manufactured by Boeing. 67%. And it's hard to get good stats and good data on the number of maintenance problems that occur at any given time. But it appears from the research that 60 to 70% of all maintenance issues when you're flying around North America are attributed to Boeing planes. So it seems like to me like they're dead on it. If there's 67% of the planes that are flying and 60 to 70% of the problems are Boeing planes, that seems to make sense. Yet we have these whistleblowers, and we do know that the DEI program that was pushed forward in 2020 by David Calhoun really became the cultural mission of the company. I've taught on the Martinis with Scott channel and the Winning Momentum podcast. I have taught before, had conversations with guests before. You can go back and read all that. But the biggest thing that you need to do when you're trying to turn around an organization in face a crisis is you need to build teamwork around the value of fixing the problem. In other words, at the Boeing situation, you say, well, we have a safety first culture. That is our value, a safety first value. And you build teamwork around that so that everybody is contributing and being rewarded and making their decisions, the micro decisions, every day, one at a time, to prioritize that value. You can't have competing cultures. You have to have clarity and you have to have a value. There is no other effective way to turn around an organization and to meet a crisis. You can't do it top down. There's just too many small things that pop up all the time. I've told you before, I'll just tell you a little short story. when I was turning around a food manufacturing company, and it had all sorts of quality and fill rate problems. In other words, attainment problems. In other words, it wasn't again, laughing at the comments, completely inappropriate but funny. It wasn't producing what it was supposed to produce that day. And so, you're supposed to make 100 units. That's what planning tells you. You go to the manufacturing plant, you end up making 60 units or 40 units, or the plant shuts down. It could be an HR problem. It could be a materials handling problem. You don't have the ingredients that you need to make what you're supposed to make that day. It could be a maintenance problem because the machine broke. There's all sorts of reasons that would happen. But if you set a value of, we're going to meet this attainment, and you reward people to work together, which we did in that system, you can change things pretty quickly and pretty rapidly. So, for example, the point of that story was that we created a system that every time we didn't produce what we were supposed to produce, every employee in that organization could fill out a form, and they could say, hey, this is what happened. Here's how I personally would fix it, not what you should do, management, but what I will do to fix that problem so it never happens again. And when you filled out that form and you did that, you got a reward. There was a scorekeeper, a board in the back of the plant where things, it was a competition every month. It went to your HR file for promotions and raises. There was other forms of recognition. I think there was a gift certificate to go shopping with or whatever. So there was incentive to participate in this program. And it was so successful that we had hundreds and hundreds of ideas coming forward in very short order. But the very first one on the first day was that, you had all this huge manufacturing plant with these manufacturing lines for food, and there was not enough eggs at one of the lines, and so the line shut down. Well, why was there not enough eggs? Because this person running this line over here thought that the eggs were his eggs, and he counted them, and that was fine. And then this woman over here running the other line counted the same eggs and thought they were her eggs. And so how would you, so they ran out of eggs. How would you, from a top-down perspective, right, from an authoritative perspective, fix that problem? I would never have thought that they would count the same eggs. But from a bottom-up teamwork perspective, the two of them got together and said, oh, this is why this happened. And instead of being reprimanded for making a mistake, they were rewarded for identifying a problem and coming up with a solution, which was color coding the eggs per line. And suddenly they were heroes because they were working together as a team to the value of the organization, in that case, which was attainment. So if you have a safety value, a culture of safety first, you can do the very same thing. But what if you change that culture? And what if you say, as Mr. Calhoun did in 2020, no, my culture, my primary focus and value of this company is DEI. Again, I'm not picking on DEI. I love the heart of where it came from. But if your cultural change is diversity, equity, and inclusion, that has nothing to do with safety. And by its very nature, DEI divides the workforce. Are you in the in-group or are you in the out-group? That's what it does. Is my group, more powerful than your group? What is my social ranking? That's exactly the point of DEI. Again, not from the perspective of where it's coming from in the heart, but that's how you implement it. They teach you in DEI school, they say effective DEI requires more than just policies. It demands culture change. It demands culture change and ongoing commitment. Well, you can't have two cultures. You can't. If you want to have a safety first culture, you can't have a DEI first culture at the same time. What if you were a supervisor at Boeing and you've got two employees, and one of them is from an out group, Okay, that's not on the DEI protected list. I don't know if that's the right word, but you've got a underserved group, and they're not an awesome employee. They're an average employee, which is fine, um, on on safety and on internal controls. And then your second employee is from the majority group who you're trying to diversify away from, and they're rock stars on the safety. Well, who are you going to promote? Your incentive as a supervisor in the short term, if you have a DEI first culture, is to promote not the rock star, but the average person in our example, because it's going to increase your DEI score and you're going to get bonuses for that. Yeah, it's going to hurt you in the long term on safety, but who knows? Maybe I'm not even working here then. What do I care? I want to get my quarterly bonus. I need to improve my scores on DEI. That's where the pressure is coming from. That's what you're going to do. And very quickly, you change the entire culture and effectiveness of the entire organization. I think that is what's going on there. You cannot have two cultures. You can do all sorts of things in your business. You can have policies, you can have things that you think are important, but you cannot have two cultures. You need a very limited set of values. Otherwise, your employees aren't going to have a guidepost for making decisions, micro decisions every single day. You can walk and chew gum, but you can't have two cultures. Boeing needs to change this culture. It needs to change it to a safety first culture. How am I doing on time? Wow, I want to do 30 minutes and I'm just nailing this. What is the culture of your business? Have you defined your values? When I walk into a troubled organization, first thing to do is to set values. Because if people don't know why they're there and what they're trying to accomplish, and that they can go in a manufacturing environment, that they can go home safely at night, well, that is a real problem. Hey, I did a show on YouTube before I had to go off for the family matter. And it was an interview with an author of a book. The book is called The Phelan Feud, Phelan Feud. I'm going to talk about that more tomorrow, but check out that episode. And you should maybe think about going to buy this guy's book. I know a lot of my audience is Toronto, by the way. And this is a epic story of family succession battles, much like the TV series or HBO series or whatever channel it's on, Succession, right? And it's got greed and scandal and substance abuse and all sorts of crazy stories. But if you're in my Toronto audience, it also has, very interestingly, a lot of history of upper society Toronto, which I think is cool, including, when Harold Ballard bought the Toronto Maple Leafs and entering into the America's Cup, Canada's entry into the America's Cup, the sailing race, I think that's what it's called, and some of the clubs in downtown Toronto that I'm a member of. So for me, I found it interesting from the historical part of Toronto, not just the business side of Succession. And for my audience members that are in Toronto, I know some of you that I'm thinking of, you'll enjoy that. It's a cool, there's cool stories from UCC and BSS, the private boys and girls school. You'll like all that. It's fun stuff. All right, I think that's it for today. If anybody has any serious questions and not just weird comments, I don't see any though, so I am out of here. I'll try and talk to you tomorrow.